Welcome back to the Research Finance Education Series. This video will explain how the research study team can interpret the financial information once downloaded from Activity Transaction Report. For details on how to download that information, please visit the below video link. First, why is it important? The month-to-month transactions that impact your research project and activity can be downloaded through Activity Transaction Report. There is a wealth of information in that report, and being able to understand it and build a report is important in your ability to manage the financials of your project. The following video will assume that you are familiar with downloading this information and have this information already. We will also go through some pivot tables that you can create to see if payments were received or paid. Once the information is downloaded, it will be presented in a format such as this. You may need to extend the columns to make the information visible. I will now be going through each header and detailing what each of them mean. CO indicates the company this line transaction resides in. CO1 is the hospital, CO2 is research, CO3 is trust. Account unit indicates the accounting unit for this line transaction. Account, the account for this line item. Subaccount, the subaccount for this line item. Description, description of the account and subaccount combo. Activity, the corresponding activity this line item was coded to. Account category, the corresponding account category. This is linked to the account and subaccount combo. This will help with reporting. Year, this represents the fiscal year, April to March. PD, or period, the corresponding fiscal period, April to March. Posting date, the date when the activity is charged. Transaction date, the date when the event occurred, or the date of the invoice, or the corresponding payroll date. SY, or system. There are many teams that enter information into Lawson, our accounting system. Knowing which team booked the line item will help you investigate and answer your question quicker. PR is the payroll team, AP is the accounts payable team, CB is the treasury team, GL is research finance and or corporate finance, PO is the procurement team. Source code. You can ignore this. This is mainly for a technical usage. Transaction description. The description of the line transaction. For payments received through research finance, we'll mention Unity Health invoice number in description for easy identification. Reference. Internal transfers done by research finance. The corresponding activity will be mentioned here. Checks done by research finance. The corresponding check number will be mentioned here. Wires done by research finance. We'll mention the sequential wire number for technical use. Entries done by payroll, procurement, cash office represent their own technical coding. Vendor employee ID. The employee number of the staff or the vendor number if applicable. Vendor name. The name of the external vendor being paid. This will be blank if payment transfers to staff or other activities are done. For internal transfers and internal staff payments and deposits, this will be blank. Transaction currency. This will be the actual currency of the invoice incurred, either in USD, Euro, GBP, or Canadian. Transaction amount. This will be the actual amount of the invoice. Base currency. This will always be Canadian, as we report in Canadian dollars. Base amount. The Canadian dollar equivalent. Use this when reviewing and preparing your activity. Units. This will be applicable for payroll dealing with hours worked. If you are buying supplies or materials, the number of items or units will be mentioned. Services will be shown as 0 units. JE type. You can ignore this. This is for technical use. Control group. This is the journal entry number. Journal entries sequence. You can ignore this. This is for technical use only. Operator, the person who entered the line item. Typically, SVCEFMLSN is accounts payable. Invoice, the applicable invoice number if paying an invoice from a vendor. Invoice date, the date mentioned on the external invoice document. PO number, the applicable purchase order number if purchased through procurement. If processed through accounts payable, this will be blank. PO release, procurement coding, purchase order released. PO code, procurement coding, purchase order closed. AP voucher, accounts payable tracking number. Invoice status, released. Payment is approved, but payment has not been processed. Paid, payment is approved and payment is processed. Payment type, payment method, CHK equals check, EFT equals electronic funds transfer. Payment number, the check number if applicable by Unity Health Toronto. Payment date, date of EFT is issued or check is printed and mailed. Payment status, check open. This means AP issued the check to the payee, but the payee has not deposited the checks to their bank. Check reconciled. This means AP issued the check to the payee and the payee deposited the check to their bank. EFT reconciled. This means AP processed the payment via electronic funds transfer. Therefore, it would have been deposited directly to the payee's bank. To see if an invoice was paid or processed by accounts payable, you can create a pivot table. First, select the data range. You can insert your table into a desired work tab. Under SY, throw that into filter, filter through accounts payable. Bring in the following descriptions under row. Transaction description, payment status, invoice number, and then under values, bring in sum of base amount. Next, you can perform some formatting. Make sure that your summary is by sum. You can update the formatting. As you can see, we have one item which is open, which is processed but not paid, or deposited by the payee, and reconciled, which means that it was indeed deposited by the payee. To check if a check or wire was received, you can create the following pivot table. First, select the data that you wish to use. You can put the data into a desired work tab. Next, you want to bring in a filter under account. All deposits are starting with a 4. You can put an asterisk after the 4 to bring in all 4 series accounts. You want to select multiple items. Select OK. Next, you may want to bring in the year in case you have multiple years in your data. Next, you can bring in the period. Next, bring in the transaction description. If it was a check, bringing in the reference number would be beneficial. Lastly, you can bring in the sum of base amount. So the base amount, bring that in. Next, you can format your data, tabular form, off. Next, format the data. And now you can see that this check came in to your activity. To create a summary of all transactions for a given period, you can create this pivot table here. First, you can select all the data that you wish to create the pivot table with. You can put the information into a desired spot. Next, you can bring in the account under rows. You can bring in the account description. And then you can bring in the base amount. Next, you can format the pivot table to make it a little bit more simple. Lastly, you can bring in the formatting. These are a summary of the information in your data. You can keep in mind that the 4 series of accounts are revenue, 5 series accounts are typically expenses, and 5 threes in particular are payroll expenses. It's important to note that the cleaner you code your expenses and revenues when they occur, the easier it will be when reporting comes along. This will be helpful when you review your financial performance. The presented information is only a sample of the information and reports available to you. With the information and tools presented, you will be able to create a forecast of expenses, a plan for future similar projects, and identify any abnormal or missing transactions. If you have any questions about this presentation, please contact your research financial analyst or researchfinance@smh.ca. Thanks for watching.